Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation. Last week, for those of us that remembered, we are discussing winning the war on sexual temptation. And so today we're going on part 2, and the part 2 question we're exploring is, how did you get here? And so last week we reflected on the question, where are you in the battle on sexual temptation? We established through that though enjoying sexualized jokes and living in a world of fantasy, is the foundation for the ultimate fall for any man. And so, but we established that though those things can make us to fall, but there is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain. And that's some of what we established last week. So we left us with the challenge last week that as single men or married men, there's a need for us to be committed to our bride. And we talked about our bride in 2 categories. We talked about Christ and our earthly wife for those of us that are married, and for those that are still single, Christ as our bride. And when we get married, Christ is still our bride. Even for those that are married, Christ is your bride. So you're married to wife, to your earthly wife, and to Christ himself. So picking up further lessons from the book that we're reviewing. Remember, the book is Every Man's Battle and How for Us to Be Able to Get Victory by Stephen Arterburn and Co. and 2 of his other colleagues that wrote the book. So today we'll reflect on the question, how did you get here? So it's very important for you to know how you get to where you are, for you to be able to have victory. So because for you to be able to know how you struggle, you need to know how you got into the struggle with sexual temptation, and for you to be able to achieve adequate victory. So one of the ways that it's possible for us to get into sexual struggle, like some of the lessons picked from the book, is by having mixed standard or mixing up standards. And what do we mean by that? A lot of us, we've mixed up our personal standard with God's standards of purity. So we give excuses. Remember that last week we established, when we were having a conversation, that it was even said in the Bible that there should be no hint at all of sexual struggle among us. But the trouble is that we've really watered down the scripture. So for some of you listening, and naturally for every man, it's very easy naturally for a man to slip away into sexual sins, because our manliness makes us vulnerable. Our nature as men makes us vulnerable even into this sin. I think we're going to be talking about that in part 3, more to understand our manness and how we'll be able to have our victory. But first is to establish that not naturally being a man, it makes you even much more vulnerable and subjective to sexual sin. So a lot of us as men, maybe now as you're listening to me, you've been hoping against hope that one day you'll wake up and you'll be free from either your masturbation, from your lust to porn, or you're locking, undressing every woman around you. You're hoping that one day you grow out of this sexual sin. And for some of us, you thought maybe, when I get married, I'll be free, and that will be my point of victory. But unfortunately, I'm sad to tell you this particular time that your victory will not come by marriage. Your victory will not come by when you just wake up one day it will stop. It never happens like that. I just have a prison case not too long now of a guy that was struggling with masturbation. Then even after marriage, he's still struggling with it. And now, instead of him to seek help, he's blaming his wife, that his wife is depriving him of sexual desire, telling people, but which is not the truth. Because he has not dealt with that issue, he thinks marriage will stop it. But with a married and beautiful wife around, he still goes to his bathroom, goes wherever he wants to do it. And so sometimes marriage does not save you. There are different kind of issues like that happen. That some, those still have sex with their wife, but their mind is somewhere else. They're undressing on that women and feeling like that because they've already been addicted, or they've been already sick and they need victory. So what am I pointing at is that if we don't deal with our own sexual struggle, temptation, marriage does not change it. It won't help you if you have not dealt with it. It does not help you to have that purity. So the mixed standard here, is for us putting your purity on your wife or on your mate or on your colleague, or until when I get married my purity will come. It doesn't work that way. God holds us, individual of us, responsible for our own sexual purity. It does not count to your wife or your husband. And in this situation we're talking about men, so it does not count on your wife. And for you, if you're single, it does not count on your people or friends that are around you. And so sometimes it's way better that we remember this ahead of time for us to be able to get adequate victory. So if you don't get help now, in all of your sexual struggle, marriage won't help you. And if you're not disciplined with your eyes at this point of undressing every lady around, and marriage itself too won't help you to stop that. So it's important you seek help, and for you to also know how you got to where you are now. And so if you want to be pure, you must first admit your impurity. And so one of the ways, for those, remember last week I said those of us talking about sexual purity, we're just men or women, but in this case we're men that have been helped, that have received grace from God. And so you must first admit wherever you are struggling, no matter how little it is. You don't have to be ashamed, you have to admit and seek help. So by excusing your sexual malpractice or your sexual struggles, you're just deceiving yourself. You're only setting yourself up for destruction. So you need to admit that you have an issue, and you need to ask the Lord to help you. And once you're able to do that, then you get your victory coming. And so some of these and three ways that the book helped us in this particular chapter to see how a lot of us got to where we are now. So I don't know which of them is yours. Some came into it through naivety. They were naive and they were just deceived. You've seen a lot of people, young men that were deceived by older ladies, young men that were deceived by their colleagues and all of that. And some of them came, some of us, came into this state of struggle because of out of sheer rebellion against authority or against even God's standard. And the last part of it is that a lot of people have found themselves where they are now because of carelessness. And so a lot of us might be naive or foolish regarding God's standard. You don't know that there are consequences. So you do it because everyone else is doing it. Especially in our generation now, it's so easy to cheat. It's so easy to be unfaithful because everywhere you go to, you walk, maybe you have a job that makes you to travel everywhere. You grow up in a city, and you see that almost everybody is doing it. And sometimes even so-called your spiritual leaders. So some people will say, I've been somewhere. So many years ago at Eco, they had one seminar room. So there's a lot of top oil guys in the oil, top men in the oil and gas industry. So they were also having in a breakout room the other day. So they saw us as young men, we were also in our own breakout room. So I think they had a big dinner and all of that. So they had a lot of meal left over. We also had in our room. But so funny enough, they called us, come join them in their room, and so that they can finish all of the meal. But we were curious to really hear what they were saying in their own, because we had also in our room a lot of food too, like that. So we went from our own workshop room to just stay with the men. So one of the women, they just quickly walked out. I saw them, matured men. They were talking with code, talking about the sexual escapade, and someone was saying, even pastor, is doing it. They were talking about their pastor and all of that. I was so captivated. I just sat there. I didn't know that I was listening to all of their conversation, because I was feeling bad that some of these men were deacon or strong men in their churches, and look at what they were talking about. And they were all married of different sexual escapade or unfaithfulness, and they were just, some of them might be, there might be some of them that came into it through naiveness, or some of them is just sheer carelessness, or some of them are just rebellious against God's standard. And so if you have friends like that or people around you, you need to cut away. Remember last week we talked about having sexualized joke, that we do not take it very seriously. We are building up ourselves for trouble. And so sometimes it's just the act of rebellion. So they don't think about the consequences. And for some of them, they've gotten themselves into trouble, into a lot of trouble. So sometimes, like I said, the act of rebellion, so you think it's an adventure, and you discard all the hidden costs and all the hidden prices to pay, especially for young men. And so if you're listening to me at this point, if you have not gone into it, it might be time for you to stop. There's no advantage in it. It only brings about sorrow. It brings about a lot of troubles and hidden prices that you have to pay in the future. And so one strong point that was made in the book that I feel that it's important to share with the listener is that when it's easy for you to miss God's standard with your own personal standard of sexual purity, it means that sometimes you're already settling for what is called excellence. I know excellence sounds to be good, but in terms of sexual purity or in terms of God's standard, God is not calling us into excellence. He's calling us into obedience. Excellence means, yes, you've done all of your best, you've done what is good and great, but sometimes you are relaxed and that, but God is calling us into obedience. And so most times when you see that you struggle like this, and sometimes with keeping God's standard around purity and all that, it might be that in the other areas of your life, you're also relaxed. In other areas of your life, you just allow things to go you're not totally obeying. And so what happens, you bring it to the situation around sexual purity. And so the question would be that, are you obeying? Obedience calls for perfection. I say, perfection is not possible. Well, but it is possible in this area. That is one area that God desires us to come into perfection. So don't just give it your best. Obey God's standard. And so, I don't know which route has brought you to your struggle right now. Were you naive? Were you just rebellious? Or were you careless? So I don't know which of the route that's brought you here, but I want you to reflect at this time and to begin to think, how did I get here? Because if you don't know how you got to where you are now, you might not really get the total virtue of what you want. So it is time to take the grace of God. It is time for us to take the grace of God very serious. We need to take the grace of God as an enabler, not an excuse. A lot of us say, well, the grace of God is here, and we speak out of practice. In those days when you fall, you fail, you allow your mind to wander, and all say, the grace is sufficient. God will forgive me. God will do, and the devil keeps trapping us. Oh no, you do that. Oh, there's some we say in our generation now is that, oh well, I didn't have penetrative sex. Oh, we just romance, we just kissed, we just did all those kind of stuff, and so you just use the grace to do that. But trust me, you're setting yourself up for destruction. You're setting yourself up for trouble. So remember that the grace of God is an enabler for us to live a holy life, but it's not an excuse. Mercy, we should see mercy as an empowerment for us to stand strong. We should not see mercy as a grace to run loose. I'll repeat this statement again. It is time for us to take the grace of God as an enabler to live a holy life, not as an excuse. And it's also time for us to see mercy as an empowerment for us, or not a grace for us to run loose. So we're going to end with a call today for us to pray and to commit our relationship to God, and for us to fully align to his call to obedience. And our only hope is to obey. God is not calling us for mere excellence. Our only hope is to obey, and that's how we can receive help. If not, you remain vulnerable and you're setting yourself up for a kill by the devil. So you have to kill every hint of sexual immorality for you to be free. You can't be free until you reject meat standard. So that's where we're going to stop today. Next week, we're going to continue again, digging deep into this conversation. But if I were you, I would take some time to pray. I'll take some time to just do some soul searching and find out, how did I get to where I am now in this struggle? Was I naive? Was I rebellious? Or was I careless? And remember again that you should use the grace of God as an enabler for you to stand and pursue a holy life, but not as an excuse to do whatever you want. Until we meet again next week, I'll be praying for you, as I'm also praying for myself to remain strong and keep working to God's standard and to his plan. Until we meet again, remember, you can always send me your question. If you have any question or struggle that you are having, you can always send it to the art1920@gmail.com. So send it to the art1920@gmail.com. I will get back to you if you need help across with prayers or with any issues that you're struggling with in terms of attaining your sexual purity. Remember, this is part 2 of a part 6 series. So see you again next week. God bless you. Bye-bye.